friends, just a few elements of housekeeping, and then we will get into the first part here. So, this is two questions that I have been meaning to get into my videos that I neglected to get in the editing process in the last week. So, I am going to put these out first as a duo, and I am still working on all of the other good questions that came in, so I'm working on that today, and I will finish that up tomorrow and get that out tomorrow on Monday. So here we go. Audrey has a question about a lesser known aspect called the triseptile. She says, "Hi Jewel, can you explain the following synastry aspect? 12th house sun at 16 degrees of Gemini, making a 154 degree aspect to both Moon and Venus in Scorpio, both of which are conjunct at 20 degrees of Scorpio in the first house. Neptune is also kind of close by at 12 degrees Scorpio in the first house. Other questions I have regarding this aspect are, is a triseptile in synastry something which is typically only activated by transit, or would this always be an active aspect? If it's not always active, then can it be considered in conjunct? Thanks very much." Quincunx. I could just never say it, so I always say in conjunct because I just can't seem to manage that word. So Audrey's going to make me think today because this is a complex question. We don't hear about septiles or even biseptiles or triseptiles in synastry very much, or even in the birth chart, because they are lesser known aspects, but they are important when we're talking about even a minor aspect when that's happening between two major planets. That is something that's going to show up. So I'll answer the last part first. No, it is not going to be an in conjunction. It will show up as an in conjunction by sign. You are going to have those essential differences in style that you're dealing with, because we have two styles, Scorpio and Gemini, that don't have anything in common, but it's not an actual in conjunction aspect. In conjunctions, we need to keep those super close, 152 degrees or 148 degrees on either side. We only allow for 2 degrees on either side maximum, and it's more like 1.5 degrees to keep it really clean, because anything bigger than that, you're going to run into triseptiles. That's why when we're talking about certain aspects, we keep the orb tight, because you may be looking at a more well-known aspect and allowing for a really big orb there, but when you look at it closely, it's actually a really tight aspect that's minor that you haven't known about. So you could be mislabeling it altogether. So it's important to always look at that. So because we're talking about the sun and the moon, which is a major relationship in ourselves and in synastry, yes, the triseptile is going to show up, and it's going to be kind of a quirky thing, because triseptiles in synastry are showing that we are having to go places where we are going to present each other with sacrificial gifts. We are going to almost learn to understand the wisdom in a death that may happen between the two of us. That doesn't mean the end of the relationship. We can have little deaths along the way of conditions or traits, characteristics. So it's something that seeds us to begin to understand what it is to identify with atomicization, which is the inevitable disintegration that happens at the end of something, at the close of a cycle. So it's when we almost become very familiar with what it is to almost disintegrate and then become a part of everything, to almost become an aerosol. permeates everything. So septiles are really the key to personal immortality, which is seeing ourselves as the entirety, identifying not as the individual but as the all. That's why they represent the seventh house. They are of the seventh house, septiles, and all of the biseptiles and triseptiles as well. They are really the key to understanding the entire relationship of everything. And so the eternal, they are extremely spiritual and irrational aspects because they require the understanding of seeing beyond what makes sense into what really is the substrata of everything. And so when we are doing septiles in synastry, what's happening is there's going to be a relationship between the passive and the aggressive tendencies between the sun and the moon, the give and the take, the feminine and the masculine. So the feminine in the moon person, the masculine in the sun person, also the feminine in the Venus person, because this is also going to be a triseptile between the sun and Venus, but it's going to show up strongly between the sun and the moon. Septiles are not going to be one of the major things that are taking place. They're going to be very under the table, but because we're dealing with the luminaries between two people, they are going to be something that is more of a theme, more of an obvious theme. So you're going to need to incorporate the realizations that you come to when it comes to the give and the take, the passive and the aggressive, the role of the male and the female between the two of you, the realizations that you may have about what it is to understand something from an entire viewpoint, incorporating those lessons into the actual structure of your being, the actual structure of your, not just personality, but your total understanding. So this is a really potentially immortality inspiring kind of connection that would be happening here. Something that would lead us to become enlightened in the sense that we would be able to transcend the individual identification and adopt a universal or eternal identification, identifying with an entire cycle rather than of being a part of it, seeing oneself as the cycle. So it's potentially I want to say a disintegrating relationship between the two of you, in the sense that there will be deaths that lead to you becoming more of an aerosol, becoming more of a permeating factor rather than a personal factor. So it's going to have a lasting effect on how you personally identify either with being the individual or with being the all, the universal, the eternal. Claire has a synastry question. She says, I have a synastry question regarding Black Moon Lilith. It's the Lilith that you can select at the drop-down menu in additional objects in astro.com. So that's going to be the one that most of us are familiar with. So in a man's natal chart, Lilith was involved in a T-square where it's opposite Saturn, squared by Pluto, and Lilith itself conjunct the North Node. The woman's moon now conjuncts his Lilith. I have watched the video on a man's Lilith being harshly aspected and can see it does point to his preference in women. There's certainly a disdain for women that are overtly sexual. The woman's moon is in conjunct to Venus, which makes her Venus trine his Pluto and Jupiter, and is in a grand trine with Chiron and her own Lilith. I would like to hear about your analysis on the synastry. Hope the information is not too complicated. Oh, no, no. I've got a lot of Mercury Virgo going on, so I eat that for breakfast. Let's take a look at the dude here. Looks like we don't have a birth time here. So there's Lilith there at the North Node. Yes, opposing Saturn and square to Pluto. It's not showing up as aspected on the graph, but it's there if you look closely. So Lilith at the North Node, that's what he's driven towards, is Lilith-y women, Lilith experiences of becoming honest with what he really wants. But Lilith is square to Pluto, so there's going to be some fear that's involved in this, fear of losing one's power, because that's what's at the basis of a man's fear of Lilith, fear of losing our power. That's why there's always something in the stories associated with Lilith, quote, stealing a man's seed. That's code for stealing a man's power, his ability to reproduce, his ability to take on the world, as a man, uncompromised. So there's a need there to transform out of fear of becoming completely empowered through being honest with himself, through what he's truly, truly attracted to, what his true desires are. Because remember, Lilith is the type of man, Lilith in a man's chart is the type of woman that he is truly, truly attracted to if he is really honest with himself. So it's the type of porn that he looks at when no one is looking. It's the type of browser history that he's got going on his computer. If you want to know what Lilith is, get a hold of his pornography and you'll know. So this is going to be more of a lesson in appreciation of his own desires. And if he cannot label that and push that down and judge that and suppress that, then he's not going to have a problem with what Lilith is in the outside world. This is successful women who take life just by the reins and make it happen. That's what he's not going to like. That's going to be intimidating to him. Women who are free with their sexuality and use it as a status symbol. That's going to be something that's going to be terrifying to somebody like this. And then we have Saturn opposing, so there's going to be a moral judgment that comes into this. There's going to be ideas about restriction, structure, tradition that she's going to need to adhere to in order to, quote, be respectable. So those are all things within himself that he has to come to terms with, and that will be reflected in the outside world and projected onto the outside world until he can become comfortable with what it is to be free to admit what he wants and wants to be, and wants to say no to and wants to say yes to. And there's going to be a lot of breaking from tradition in order to be able to do that. But that's what the North Node is after. That's what the experiences of the North Node are just sucking up. So it's interesting, yeah, what we've got going on here. Now we can't see what the descendant is. We can't see what the 7th house looks like, but we do see that we have Venus, Eros, Uranus conjunction, and that's square to the moon. So that's also going to bring up issues of not knowing what he wants, and then probably attracting fickle women, or women who also are going to, be more, say, difficult to pin down or satisfy or get to commit with some of the aspects we've got going on here, because the moon is trying to satisfy the psychological need for commitment and stick-to-itiveness, tradition coming through Capricorn. And then we have these other things where we don't know what we want, because we want to marry the moon, but we want to date Venus. And that's something that we have to understand very, very well when we're looking at the psychology of men and the natal charts of men, that the moon represents the mother. It represents familiarity, the past, what nursed us. Men are looking to marry the moon. It is their security, it is their idea of domestic life, it is safety, because it's familiar. Venus is what a man is attracted to, is what a man likes, what he loves, his social style, what he wants to spend his money on, what he finds beautiful, artistic, his muse. That is the girlfriend. That is who a man will date. But when it comes right down to it, men will date Venus, but they marry the moon. The moon is the deeper planet, the deeper archetype within a man that is looking to connect. Venus is fun, but the moon is serious. And so it's difficult when men have hard aspects between Moon and Venus, because it pits their preferences, which is Venus, against their needs and their safety requirements. That's the Moon. So they have a hard time with knowing what they want, and this commonly comes out as attracting a partner who doesn't know what she wants. He just can't seem to get down to the bottom of that. And this is all hard aspects between between the moon and Venus that will cause this in a man. So it's not just that we have Lilith going on there. The deeper thing, the deeper archetype he's struggling with here, the one that's more pervasive, is that Moon-Venus square, and then the Venus also being conjunct to Uranus. So that's going to infuse the personality with an adventurous spirit. Venus is adventurous, the moon is not. So you have these two very, very different sides to the same man. Let's see what else we've got going on here. We've got square between Mars and Jupiter, so we're going to fight for our beliefs very stubbornly with that one. Nice trine from Mars to the Sun, so good amounts of energy there. Mercury coming through an excellent sign, a nice trine to the Moon, so we are at least communicative, and we've got that going on. Okay, so let's take a look at the next chart. So here's Claire's chart. We have a Sagittarius ascendant, and that has Jupiter coming into the 11th and opposing Sun and Mercury there. So that's actually a really buoyant, fun aspect to have. Lots of good humor, social personality with that going on there. But we do have an introverted placement. The sign of the moon is coming through an engaging house, though, in the first house. So it is one of the leading planets there. So we don't lack for enthusiasm here with what we've got going on. Potential for great positivity within the personality here. So Lilith is in a trine to the moon, so we're very comfortable with Lilith, and Lilith is coming through Taurus, so it's extra sexy, or just really about enjoying our senses, our sensibilities to the hilt. Enjoying our bodies, enjoying all of what the senses have to offer. It's a very earthy expression of Lilith. Taurus might actually rule Lilith, in my mind, in many ways. So, nice trine going on there. And Moon is in conjunct to Venus by sign, but not by actual degree. Moon is more in conjunct to Ceres, which is childbearing, specifically about nurturing, raising. It is similar to the moon, very much, Ceres is, but specific. It's not so much about security or safety or the past. It's more about the present, actually, taking care, serving in the present, growing things, nurturing things, has a lot to do with cultivation of things. So that's where we have a little bit of an archetypal struggle going on there. So let's look around here and see what else we've got. Descendant ruled by Mercury, and that coming into the into your fifth, conjunct to the Sun and opposing Jupiter. So we're looking for status. We're looking for someone who's a hard worker. It's probably going to be quieter, put his head down, be very ambitious, more serious, has big dreams here. Also can possibly have some pretty severe judgments and opinions, even moral judgments and opinions there. He can be very right-minded, even have some narcissistic types of qualities when it comes to, believing that his ideas may be better than those around him. So this is kind of a partner that is being indicated as kind of larger than life when it comes to how they view their morality or approach ambition there. So let's take a look at the synastry chart. So we have female on the inside, male on the outside here in the synastry chart. And we have Moon opposing Saturn being the first thing that I see. And Moon is indeed conjunct to Lilith there. And that means it's also square to Pluto. So the female in the relationship is going to be directly involved emotionally, intimately with the struggle that the male in the natal chart, that the male is dealing with in his own natal chart. So the woman in this relationship is going to feel very much in tune with what that is. That's going to be tough in some cases because there could be a direct judgment that you are going to be dealing with, my friend, as a result of this particular placement. The Moon conjunct to the North Node in itself is actually good, but we have this other constant lesson that we're trying to assimilate there. His Moon coming up to conjunct to your Neptune and Uranus. And then we have Uranus that are square. So we have a bit of an age difference there to have that. So Uranus that are square is going to show up more over time as fundamental differences. Doesn't automatically mean that those are going to be incompatible differences, but they're going to be deep differences in what Uranus means for you. What is your idea of social freedom? What is your idea of what it is to transcend laws and see something greater? What is your idea about socialism, capitalism, groups of people? How should we think? What is the sociology of this situation or that situation? We can have deep disagreements about that kind of thing. So that will show up more over time because the outer planets are what is actually more fundamental when it comes to compatibility. The inner planets are what bring us together. The inner planets are what attract us and they initialize the relationship. It's how we jive together when it comes to our likes and our dislikes and what you want to do. But over time, those outer planets start to exert more and more and more of an influence. And that's when we start to, get to that place where we've been together maybe 6 months, a year, and we realize, oh, okay, you voted for this person that I just can't stand, and I'm kind of sickened by your ideas. And those are the kinds of things that start to come out, and we become more aware of what we're really dealing with. So always keep in mind that when we have hard aspects between outer planets, that is something that isn't going to show up immediately. So let's see here. We've also got a nice conjunction of his Mars to your Sun, Mercury, Jupiter business there. So it's going to be super enlivening, invigorating, exciting. You're going to feel more energetic in each other's presence. There's going to be a lot of feeling more adventurous. We need to take more chances as a result of that. That can be interesting. An opposition going on from your Venus to his Neptune, and that's going to happen with people around his age range. That may be something you're familiar with. We need to be careful when we have something like that going on. We've also got a trine from your Venus to his Pluto, so it's also going to be a passion inviter there. So we have to see what this is going to blend into in the composite charts. It's going to put you in a position where you will want to see the best in him. And the both of us highly, highly idealize each other. We have an opposition like this. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be bad. We have to look at everything, and we've got that going on. On the other side, we also have a, let me count. Yeah, we do have a square going on from your own Uranus Neptune to his Venus. So we do have a double whammy, hard aspect on both sides between Venus and Neptune. So we have to be careful of that, because that does tend to lead us down a primrose path. That because we have ideas about each other. We want each other to be what we want each other to be, and so when we're faced with traits or things about each other that don't match that agenda, that plan we have for each other, that's where we can tend to not acknowledge those things, not see those things, because they're getting in the way of our plans for each other. So we just have to be really, really aware that we're generally not wanting to see the truth about each other when we have hard Venus-Neptune stuff. But we do have moons coming into the same sign. Excellent, wonderful for being able to understand each other's inner landscape and feelings. Sun's coming into trine signs. Wonderful, lots of agreement there when it comes to how to interpret each other's behavior, energy levels, vitality levels. Just have a lot in common there. So there are very good things that are occurring here. We do have some basic points of agreement that are happening. Let's take a look here over at, if I can spot it. So this puts your Lilith fairly close in a conjunction to his Mars. That's going to be hot to trot there. Mars-Lilith aspects do tend to be interesting. It's like Lilith has a bit of a warrior in her, and that's what Mars is about. So we can really have some, I don't want to say rough sex, but encounters that are bringing out our wild side or our more aggressive side there. So it does tend to fire up a sexual relationship quite a bit. So let's take a look at the composite chart. Okay, so in the composite chart we see that we have the Moon Venus in conjunction showing up here. That is a repeat from the natal patterns that we're looking at originally. So when we have a Moon Venus in conjunction, it is something that that can be a problem if we have a otherwise very difficult composite chart, because there's going to be a pattern of giving in to each other about things that we personally have a stake in or feel very strongly about. So we're both going to feel like we're having to give in to the other one, and that we're the one that's always having to do this. Now, we have the Moon also opposing the Sun and Mercury. The Moon opposing Mercury is actually a good aspect in a composite chart. It's showing that there's a certain way that we scratch each other's back when it comes to our more everyday environment there. So there are some good things going on. We can have some very, very uh, great differences when it comes to our preferences in lifestyle. But when we have the opposition between Moon and Mercury showing that there's a real complement here, we could really work with it. We can come to an arrangement where we're both feeling like we're getting what we're looking for. So we see at the Sun, Moon, Mercury level, there's a great deal of agreement going on. Venus is kind of the outlier. It's in this in conjunction to the Moon, and then also in a semi-sextile aspect here to Mercury. So Venus is kind of the iffy one but Venus is one of the more superficial things between the two of you, and it's in a nice trine to it's in a nice trine to the North Node there, and loosely to Uranus. So we have a pretty good amount of tolerance, a way that we can relate to each other as friends, allow some space there. And we have that Uranus business. We can't see what houses this is all happening in, but because the Moon is in an opposition to the Sun and Mercury, it means that there's enough available. There's enough to work with there at the Moon level, where we can probably make the sacrificing that we feel like we need to make over to Venus, and have that not be something that's going to pop the relationship. Venus is in a wider square to Saturn, though. That is something that we actually do see pretty commonly in functioning composite charts, even though it is something that's kind of a limiting aspect, because of how it links to people in a relationship that's based on commitment, sort of a long term there. It can be a bit of a barrier to reaching an agreement about what we should do. That Saturn, what are we going to direct the efforts of the partnership towards? So we can have different ideas about success, and that's something that we're going to have a good talky poo about. But we also have an in conjunction on the other side of it's wider. Actually, it isn't even counting of Saturn and Uranus. We're not going to look at that. But the Sun is sextile to Saturn, so that's working extremely well. There is a way that you can combine your efforts. And the Moon is coming up as a trine to Saturn, which is awesome in a composite chart. That's something that shows there's actually a lack of disagreement. There's a lack of drama between us. So this is doable, my friend. This is a workable composite chart. There are some very good things here. Some challenges, but they're going to be more minor when you look at the entire context of what you're both getting out of it. Doesn't seem to be Lilith issues here at all. Lilith looks somewhat totally unaspected. Well, in a semi-sextile to Neptune, so there is a gauzy kind of romancy thing going on there when it comes to Lilith, but it's not coming up as an issue between the two of you. So, this is worth looking into, my friend.